Thanks, gentleman from California, and I will now recognize the chairman of the committee, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you,
Ladies
Mr.
and
Chairman.
gentlemen, this right here is one of the most revealing, frustrating, and frankly infuriating moments you're going to see coming out of Washington. Because what you're about to watch isn't just a debate. It's a complete exposure of failed leadership, broken policies, and political denial at the highest level. And at the center of it, Congressman Jim Jordan, asking the kind of questions that millions of Americans have been screaming for answers to.
Thanks, gentleman from California, and I will now recognize the chairman of the committee, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rogers, what percentage, any idea what percentage of the United States population lives in a sanctuary jurisdiction?
That's a good question. I don't have that numbers, but it's far too high. It should be zero.
Yeah, it should be zero, but it's like 31.5%. 18 cities, 11 states, 3 counties, and the District of Columbia. And because these are big blue cities, big blue states, again, almost a third of the population lives in a jurisdiction where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where local left-wing political leaders tell local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement when it comes to enforcing federal law. Is that your understanding of sanctuary jurisdiction?
Correct, yeah.
And is that literally one of the dumbest things you've ever heard?
Yes, and it's against federal law as well because it's
no
a crime to steal
kidding.
aliens.
But in a third of the country that goes on. And last year alone, we just marked this bill up 2 weeks ago. Last year alone, 2025, 17,864 times, ICE would file a detainer with a local jail, local detention center, where there's a person who's in the country illegally and been charged with the crime, and ICE would send a detainer notice saying, hey, if you're gonna let this guy out, give us a call. And 17,864 times in 2025, local law enforcement, because left-wing politicians told them to, would not work with federal law enforcement and many times release these people to the streets. Again, I'd ask you, is that a crazy policy or what?
It's absolutely crazy, and it's totally counterproductive for everybody, illegal immigrants and legal immigrants who live in those communities.
And would you be surprised to learn that several of those people who were released then went out and caused harm, did some crime against some other American, or maybe some other migrant, who knows, but committed some crime after they've been released when they could have been turned over to federal law enforcement?
It's not surprising, it's totally predictable, and it's a tragedy for each of those people.
Totally predictable. Mr. Sines, would you say that's a good policy or a bad policy?
Which policy?
Policy, sanctuary jurisdiction.
It's a good policy.
It's a good policy to let 17,000 people out, potentially 17,000 people not on a detainer, and let some of those people released to the streets who had already been charged with the crime, and then they commit another crime, and you're saying that's a good policy?
That's your characterization of how that works out.
It's
an inaccurate characterization.
That is the facts.
No, I'm sorry, it's inaccurate.
Well, okay, so tell me what's inaccurate.
If you want to have accurate,
31% of the population lives in a sanctuary jurisdiction. Is that inaccurate?
I don't know. I'll take your word on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
So that's not inaccurate. What about this? 17,864 times a detainer was not honored last year by local law enforcement when ICE issued a detainer.
Again, I have no idea, Congressman. I came here to talk about Plyler versus Doe, and I can absolutely guarantee you there has never been a detainer issued against a student enrolled in public education as a result of Plyler.
I'll get to the student
But the
issue.
hearing is about Plyler. So I don't have an answer to your question about whether the data you have is accurate related to something completely unrelated.
Let's suspend. It is the gentleman's time to ask the questions. The witness can respond to the questions, but we're not going to talk over each other.
Mr. O'Brien, to get to Plyler, there's a cost associated with this, right? With this decision.
Yes, there is.
Significant. I mean, I think the court said way back in 1982, the number of illegal aliens in public schools was small, and there was, quote, no evidence in record suggesting that illegal entrants imposed any significant burden on the state's economy. That was the ruling back in 82, but things have changed a little bit since then, haven't they?
They've changed drastically, and the estimated combined cost to the taxpayers, federal, state, and local, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 billion with a B.
And it was particularly exacerbated the previous 4 years in the last administration. Is that accurate?
Yes, by a significant margin.
8 to 10 million people coming into the country in a 4-year time frame. Many of those were students. I remember the Biden administration lost track of hundreds of thousands of those students. Is that right?
About 300,000, that's correct.
Yeah. So there's certainly a cost associated with that. That's what this hearing is about as well. Yeah. Let me ask one other question here, and then maybe I'll yield a few seconds to my good friend from Texas. Is Thomas Paine an undocumented immigrant or a founding father, Mr. Rogers? I'm just curious.
He's a founding father, and he's not an undocumented immigrant.
Yeah, Mr. O'Brien?
He was a citizen of the UK who went to another territory of the UK, so it was like moving from Massachusetts to New Hampshire.
Yeah. Ms. Drogan, I just was curious if you thought he was an undocumented immigrant or a founding father.
He's a founding father.
And what about you, Mr. Sines? What are you going to say to that question?
I'd say the terms don't apply back when Tom Paine was alive. So it is true, he was undocumented. But that really wasn't a category of any concern.
Was he a founding
in the 18th
father?
Century. He's both.
Come on,
founding father.
Come on, it's common sense, pun intended. Was he a founding father?
Of course he was.
All right. God bless you. I will yield. Well, sorry, Mr. Gill, I ran out of time.
I appreciate the chairman. I will now recognize the ranking member for UC requests.
Mr. Chairman, don't leave yet. I have a question for you. If you
Mr. Gold, hold on. I'm going to recognize the ranking member for UC.
I can hold the UC.
And Mr. Goldman, I do have to do an interview. I was like, I do.
You know,
So here's the situation. Jordan asks a very simple question. How many Americans are living in sanctuary jurisdictions? And the answer? About 31.5% of the country. Let that sink in. Nearly 1/3 of the United States is living in areas where local politicians actively refuse to cooperate with federal immigration law enforcement. Now think about that for a second. We're talking about elected officials, people sworn to uphold the law, telling law enforcement not to enforce the law. That's not just bad policy. That's intentional negligence. And when Jordan presses the witness, even they admit it. They call it crazy, counterproductive, and yes, even one of the dumbest things they've heard. And honestly, that might be the most honest moment in the entire hearing. But here's where it gets even worse. Jordan drops a bombshell. In 2025 alone, ICE issued 864 detainers, requests to local authorities to hold individuals who were in the country illegally and charged with crimes. And what happened? Those requests were ignored. Not once, not twice, 17,000 plus times, meaning these individuals were released back onto the streets instead of being handed over to federal authorities. Now I want you to really think about this. How many crimes could have been prevented? How many innocent people could have been protected? Because even the witness admits, what happens next is predictable. Some of those released individuals go on to commit more crimes. That's not speculation. That's common sense. And then comes the moment that tells you everything you need to know. Another witness steps in and says, this is a good policy. A good policy? Letting potentially dangerous individuals walk free, ignoring federal law, putting politics above public safety. And when pressed, they don't defend the outcome. They just say Jordan's description is inaccurate. No facts, no numbers, no accountability, just deflection. At this point, the hearing starts to break down. People are talking over each other. The chairman has to step in and restore order. Why? Because the truth is uncomfortable. And when the facts start stacking up, the other side doesn't want to engage. Then the conversation shifts to the Supreme Court case. Plyler versus Dell. Back in 1982, the court said undocumented students could attend public schools because at the time, the burden was considered small. But today, that's no longer reality. We're now talking about an estimated $80 billion cost to taxpayers. $80 billion. And yet, somehow, we're supposed to pretend this system is working. Add to that millions entering the country in just a few years. Hundreds of thousands of minors unaccounted for, and a federal system that looks completely overwhelmed. And still, the same policies continue. No changes, no accountability. And then Jordan does something brilliant. He brings up Thomas Paine. He asks, was he an undocumented immigrant or a founding father? And you can see the room struggle. Because this is what happens when ideology overrides common sense. The answer is obvious. But instead of clarity, we get confusion, technicalities, and word games. Here's the bottom line. A nation that refuses to enforce its laws is a nation that's choosing chaos over order. A government that ignores public safety is a government that's failed its people. And leaders who defend these policies, they're not protecting communities. They're protecting politics. This is why voices like Jim Jordan matter. Because someone has to ask the hard questions. Someone has to challenge the system. And someone has to stand up for law, order, and the American people. If you believe in secure borders, safe communities, and accountability in government, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Because the truth matters, and it's not getting enough airtime.